Alright, Ecclesiastes is one of the most confusing books in the entire Bible. There is so much metaphor and allegory and highly symbolic language, you may find yourself completely lost with every passing verse. Which is why, in my previous video, I explained the first 4 chapters of Ecclesiastes in detail, but still made it incredibly simple to understand, and today, I'm going over the next 4, starting in chapter 5 and ending in chapter 8. So make sure you check out that last video that's linked on screen right now and in the description down below so you have the full context behind this video, and make sure to subscribe so you do not miss the final part 3 video of Ecclesiastes coming out next week. And as always, if you find yourself enjoying today's video, please send this to someone who you think will also enjoy, so that way we could spread some good Bible knowledge to as many people as possible, one person at a time. But with all of that being said, let's get this thing started with Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they are doing evil. Be not rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few, for a dream comes with much business, and a fool's voice with many words. These verses are extremely important, okay? We're starting very importantly. It reminds us to be humble before God, not speaking many words to be heard by God, not making many empty promises to God, but rather coming to God with honesty in prayer and being truthful in what we say. You should not go to God in just a make yourself feel better type of way, but rather you should truly understand that you are speaking to the God of the universe, who is not here to play games with you. When you vow a vow to God, do not delay in paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. This clearly communicates the great point that you can tell God anything, but that anything needs to be honest from your heart, and you need to mean business when you say it. Especially don't do it for others to see you being a quote-unquote good person, making all these vows to God, showing how truly faithful you are, because that's not what God cares about. Be 100% honest with God and say what you truly feel, and that is what God will see and appreciate. The rest of this chapter is basically just a reiteration of chapters 2 and 3, which is why it's important to watch the first video. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. There is a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, and those riches were lost in a bad venture, and he is father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, and much vexation and sickness and anger. So we can clearly see the similarities between chapter 2 and 3 coming in here. If you live your life for money, you will never be satisfied. And worse, if all that money goes away, your life essentially crumbles beneath you. Money, power, and pleasure are all gifts from God to be enjoyed, but they cannot be your entire life, or your life will be sad. Thusly, he says, everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. So again, we see the same thing here. You need to enjoy your money. You can enjoy your money, enjoy your power, enjoy your pleasures, but focus on God and focus on the joy in your life, so that even if all that money, all that power, and all those pleasures go away, you still have God and you still have joy. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind, a man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires, yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. The point he is making here is that it's ridiculous to believe that God would provide you with something, but yet not allow you to use it. Somewhat ironically though, a lot of people are given much by God, like he says, wealth, possessions, honor, but these people do not enjoy what God has given them, but instead they look to things that belong to others, envious of what they cannot have, and completely negligent of what they do have. So much so sometimes to the point where they think that God is literally taking from them. If you have ever seen the movie Bruce Almighty, this is exactly what our main character, Bruce Nolan, does. Literally exactly. He works at a news studio, and he's expecting to get the big job of anchor. But instead, his work rival, if you would like to call it that, Evan Baxter, gets the job instead of him. This causes Bruce to go home and curse God angrily to his girlfriend, complaining that God is slowly taking everything away from him, completely ignoring him, and giving everything that he thinks he deserves to Evan. But, as Bruce's girlfriend points out to him, everything could be much worse. Bruce neglects the fact that he has a good-paying job, a nice apartment, a loving girlfriend, and a dog. Like, what else could you want? He's neglecting everything that God has given him to look on in envy and entitlement for what Evan has. The preacher describes this as an appetite. All the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool, and what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. He makes the point that God knows what is good for you. So hating what you have, disregarding what you have, not enjoying what you have, will subsequently cause you to desire to have something else. And this thought process gets you nowhere. It just makes you sad and discontent. It's a waste of your life that, quote, passes like a shadow. It's a life lived in vain, trudging along, always unhappy with what you have. Now, this doesn't mean that you cannot want more out of life. No, absolutely not. Again, working is good. You do not have to live poor, never trying new things, never wanting to make enough money to go on vacation once in a while. Of course not. Again, God knows what is good for you, so trust him. Acknowledge everything that he is giving you and be thankful for it. Don't be like Bruce, neglecting your job, neglecting your family, neglecting your faith in God, but instead be grateful for everything that God has given you. Because everything you have is a blessing. And at least in my personal life, everything I have is much more than I deserve. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fool is in the house of mirth. In these few verses, he highlights a couple of different points, starting mainly with, a good name is better than precious ointment. For a little bit of context, back in Bible times, special types of ointment were extremely expensive and sought after, including in the days of Jesus, with a bottle of ointment poured on Jesus being quoted as close to 300 denarii, which was about a year's wage of manual labor, so very expensive, like buying a new car. So in saying this, he elaborates on a point that he made in chapter 4, where being known for who you were rather than what you did is what's important. It's apparently worth more than an exorbitant amount of money. So the way you build these relationships that people value more than a whole bunch of money and valuables, is by being strong and enduring hardship. He uses the word mirth here to describe the heart of the fool. The word mirth in this context is used to describe what I like to call screwing off. Basically avoiding hardship, tough conversations, and actually meaningful lessons, instead opting to just screw off, perpetually distracting yourself with useless amusement that literally gets you nowhere. The kind of people doing this, including me for many, many years of my life, refuse to learn anything, slowly spiraling themselves into an unfruitful existence with less and less genuine people wanting to be around them. Over time, this leads to a loss in emotional control, causing weak-mindedness and a sharp decline in ability to be corrected. The preacher here says, in order to solve this emotional immaturity, you need to hear the rebukes from the wise and stop listening to the songs of fools. To put it real simply, the way you become wise is by listening to wise people. It's that simple. over time you will develop the endurance to hear the tough things from the wise and take the corrections to heart and learn from them. But again, as is common throughout this entire book, you need to trust God first and foremost, okay? Never assume yourself to be so wise that you can somehow fix everything. You are never going to be so wise to the point of not sinning, or especially falling for schemes, and the preacher warns about this very heavily. Sure, you can avoid them, but we are naturally inclined to sin, and he also warns very heavily, especially the sexual kind. If you are a person that's old enough to have feelings, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. The preacher says that we need to be extremely careful with these sexual schemes because it is our biggest weakness. So much so to the point where if you get caught deep enough in it, you will know that it is wrong, but you will still actively seek it out. Even the Apostle Paul, a man of incredible faith and perseverance, said himself, referring to himself in Romans chapter 7, verse 15, "For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing that I hate." If Paul, a guy who literally wrote close to half of the New Testament, admits to sinning even when he knows it's wrong, we can be sure that we are never going to be wise enough to never sin, which is why, again, we need to rely on God's understanding more so than our own. God knows us better than we know ourselves, and if you remember that always, then you might actually become pretty wise. I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, "What are you doing?" Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything, although man's troubles lie heavy on him. For he does not know what is to be, for who can tell him how it will be? Now, when I first read this, I was extremely confused, because it seems pretty simple. Don't take your stand in an evil cause sounds a lot like do not do what is right, but this is of course not what is meant here. What is being said is relating to honoring authority, because this is honoring to God. That's the base level here, okay? Going up one level, he says do not take your stand in an evil cause because of two reasons: brash, quick, unthoughtful emotional action, and uncertainty of outcome. Now, what does this mean? Well, it's actually pretty simple. When you act quickly, based not on thought, but on emotion, your better judgment goes out the window, and you will end up making very bad decisions, getting yourself in places you do not want to be in, like jail, or knocked out on the concrete, or even worse, dead. Even though you may feel very emotional about a topic and want to act on it immediately, you need to stop and think about the best way and the best time to do what you want. This is going to prevent bad decision making and possibly save you from a much worse outcome. The outcome of a situation is always uncertain, but it's especially uncertain when you are acting out of emotion and your brain shuts off. You do not know whether or not your emotional actions might cause someone to stop being your friend. Maybe it might get you fired from your job, even get you arrested, or maybe severely injured. You don't know, so it's better to just spare yourself some of the uncertainty and act not hastily in emotion, but rather carefully consider your plan of action and the best way and time to perform said action. The reason he specifically points to emotionally acting against the king's authority is because the king is an example for God. The king in that day was the ultimate authority over basically everything. Whatever he said went, in the same way that God is the ultimate authority over everything, and whatever he says goes. This is why the fear of the Lord is important, and following commands is important. It's a constant reminder that God is in ultimate authority, and thusly you should trust his authority and not want to fight against it. Like a trusted parental figure. You know that they just want to help you, so trying to fight their authority to exact your own is kind of counterintuitive in a lot of situations and could possibly have negative repercussions. But the preacher points out that negative repercussions here on earth happen pretty instantly. If you say the wrong thing to the wrong guy, you could get hit in the face pretty darn quick. So you're more likely to watch yourself when repercussions are imminent. But with God, the repercussions seem a lot less imminent. Because the sentence against an evil is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. So basically what he's saying here is that the eternal repercussions are going to happen. God is eventually going to judge you along with the entire world. So even though the judgment seems far away, it's not happening speedily, it's going to happen eventually. This is why you need fear of the Lord. You need trust in God. You need careful consideration of your actions. You may think when you see some injustice happen right in front of you, that guy just got away with it. But I'm here to tell you, no, he didn't. Even though there is much injustice and it happens all the time, no one gets away with it. God will ultimately work his will, and evil will not go unpunished. Though we do not know exactly how God works and exactly how his vengeance will occur, we should trust in his justice and live our lives enjoying what we have, knowing that we have trust in God, and that to all the evildoers who do not accept God, justice will be served. But with that concludes our part 2 in Ecclesiastes. If you found yourself enjoying today's video, please consider subscribing so you do not miss the final part 3 video coming out next week. But in the meantime, check out my previous video that's linked on screen right now, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.